chain of Valhalla imaginings which led to his suicide, as if the whole alpine landscape were haunted by a ghost of the surreal future, to be painted in 1908 by Giorgio de Chirico. In this nostalgia of the infinite, Neuschwanstein, of the now consciously alienated mind, as immediate and remote as the castle Kafka's land surveyor sees but never reaches, phones and is bureaucratically shunted from, evasive ultimate of religion turned on itself. Even when Kafka's surrealism had been confirmed by the Great War, the many had no notion how his castle and trial, his metamorphosis into cockroach and the like, applied to their daily lives. How could Ludwig II have known what mask of the Red Death his fairy castle was to accommodate? How much more purblind the new rich of gilded America must have been to the ghostly estrangements which nightmared their gingerbread, as in the meeting on the stair of James' turn of the screw. The apparition had reached the landing halfway up. In the cold, faint twilight, with a glimmer in the high glass and another on the polish of the oak stair below, we faced each other in our common intensity. Like that candy manufacturing malaise and soul closure from which at the turn of the century Hart Crane would be born to the exile of the poetry nonsense that strained his nerves, Dante's prurient mal protesi nervi. In the energized West, enlightened well-being has long overplayed its cheer. Extrapolate from Messerschmitt's 1770 Grinning Self to Shostakovich's 1945 Merry Little Piece, the Ninth Symphony. Its close carrying the comfort of Papa Haydn to an assertion the more urged for 200 years of irreversible trouble, an always toothier lie even to its jolliest participants. Since already the 20-year-old Bernini had stumbled on the disturbing truth, whether universal or a curse of Faustian civilization, that in the pairing of saved and damned, the creative energy of his own face had to operate on the satanic side, while peace and blessing would furnish a female of such wall-eyed mawkishness as must enforce angel limitation from Blake's Milton to Nietzsche's creeping Christian. So how would Eastman Johnson's charcoal of the imagined boy Lincoln reading, sketched after the Civil War, though still in the hope of pioneer humanity, how would it hold out against Baudelaire's O Lecteur, to the reader, published 12 years before, and we feed our pleasant remorse as beggars nourish their vermin? Daumier's reader of 1863 more sustains that dedication to satanic loves. It is the devil who holds the strings which move us. Johnson's glowing Lincoln would know nothing of that worst vice of all, l'ennui, hookah-smoking boredom of romantic decadence. Tu le connais, lecteur, ce monstre délicat, hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère. A close Eliot would take up in the wasteland without even troubling to translate. No one can doubt progress, from Roger Bacon to Francis Bacon to Priestley to this celebration of Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, 1897, with its 60 years of sail to steam, coach to train, lamp to electricity. The vision of technocracy builds a spread in time, from burning apex to the diffusion of common acceptance, while the counterspark condenses in the mass, Hopkins, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil. The question is not of progress, but of its satanic bent, as simple as whether the devil is real. The same split has attended the view of the city. O. Henry, though a journalist, framed the polls. Far below and around lay the city like a ragged purple dream, the wonderful, cruel, enchanting, bewildering, fatal, great city. Whitman's first focus in Democratic Vistas is on the surge of material possibility, which, thrusting up the 1890 Wainwright Building in St. Louis, Adler's steel skeleton hung with Sullivan's patterned brick, would put architecture at the vanguard of the modern. Whitman. After an absence, I am now again, September 1870, in New York City and Brooklyn. The splendor, picturesqueness, and oceanic amplitude and rush of these great cities, the unsurpassed situation, rivers and bay, sparkling sea tides, costly and lofty new buildings, facades of marble and iron, of original grandeur and elegance of design, the flags flying, the endless ships, the tumultuous streets, Broadway, the heavy, low, musical roar, hardly ever intermitted even at night. These, I say, give me a continued exaltation and absolute fulfillment. But we have already mentioned Baudelaire's antithesis, fourmillante cité, cité pleine de rêves. Ant-hill city, city full of dreams, where the spectre in plain day grips the passer-by. It is the unreal city Eliot, like that spectre, seizes on in the wasteland, where Baudelaire had encountered in self-multiplying replication his 7 old men, bent and eternal as this Daumier washerwoman, shoulders hunched again in the child, at which his soul, old dismasted hulk, danced and danced across a monstrous sea without a shore. Et mon âme dansait, dansait, vieille gabare, sans main, sur une mer monstrueuse et sans bord. In the modern break, what so drives us without bourne is art's tragic enactment of cloven value. The Eiffel-towered city, its victories of steel and dynamo, our cage and defeat, while the dejector of that aim, Van Gogh's room, or chairs, his face-clutching man on the edge of eternity, become the crushed-out oil of Heidegger's essential truth. A well-known painting by Van Gogh, a pair of peasant shoes and nothing more, and yet from the dark opening of the worn insides of the shoes, the toilsome tread of the worker stares forth. Under the shoes slides the loneliness of the field path as evening falls. The artwork lets us know what the equipment, the pair of peasant shoes, is in truth. This entity emerges into the unconcealedness, Greek aletheia, of its being. No wonder, whereas Renaissance art advances were a civic delight, each phase of this avant-garde unveiling occasioned hue and cry. Whatever deft liberation of the urbane tickles our left-bank senses in Manet's 1863 Luncheon on the Grass, the old moral and spatial connections are falling away. As in Mussorgsky's 1866, Why Should Your Eyes, so rich in the bass of Kim Borg, those transmodulations and shortcuts were creeping in, which would leave the composer unplayed until Rimsky-Korsakov had revised out the idiosyncrasies. In Paris, at the Salon des Refusés, connoisseurs could always titter. Where is the background? Why make a farce of Giorgione? And what are those girls up to? When the great causal rhetoric which Renaissance, Baroque and Enlightenment had bequeathed as their noblest heritage was to be thinned toward Verlaine's rien que nuance, the non-Western everywhere pointed the way. What the patterned flatness of the Japanese print, its casual composition and haunting remove suggested for the circle of Manet, the gamelan music of Bali would affect for Debussy when he heard it at the Paris Exposition of 1889. How elegantly the shadows of tensile harmony might be withdrawn. Frail as Debussy's own prelude depiction of sails. Under the sway of the Japanese, of Manet's figures and Boudin's color lightning, Monet caught the ephemeral play of a garden. But that was in 1866, when Debussy was a child, and 13 years before Fauré matured to the airy delight of this first piano quartet, though Verlaine, at 22, had just published a book with such garden moments. We were alone and walking in a dream. Nous étions seuls à seuls et marchions en rêvant. How the first flowers have the sweetest scent. Ah, les premières fleurs, qu'elles sont parfumées. Or the autumn song of violins a sobbing in the heart, which as much as any poem refines pure sound. Les sanglots longs des violons de l'automne blessent mon cœur d'une langueur monotone. So the chromatics of Fauré moves toward an abstract repose. The musical antecedents are as complex as the Beethoven to Wagner scene, but a piano sequence might reach from the nocturnes of Field through those bolder ones of Chopin, the D-flat major close, to Liszt, who in such studies as this Waldesrauschen went as far toward nuance as anyone around mid-century. In art, the freshening of landscape flowed from the Romantic English through Barbizon, France, where Daubigny evoked light and air over earth and water. But to see how sharp a break was still to be made, set this oil sketch of morning. Against Monet's wave reflections, not 12 years later, 1869, where space and motion atomize into abstract impressions, though the musical contrast leads us to 1888, Debussy's En Bateau, from the little suite for two pianos. Since that post-impressionist phenomenon, called musical impressionism, does not climax its suspension of tonal rhetoric in wave play, reflet dans l'eau, until Debussy's Image of 1905, contemporary not with Monet's rippling froggery, but with the advancing abstraction of his lily ponds. Avant-garde, having set the conditions for always more radical revolt against establishment, even by their acceptance, the establishment of its own styles. Renaissance, in this sense, had not been avant-garde. Its explorers could move with society toward the shared ordering of space, time, and cause. This new elite forms a cadre recruited within that now entrenched civilization and, as the military term implies, at war with its traditional values. But the current can always eddy. Renoir harnessing to the art customs of the past, Titian, Rubens, Watteau, the revolt of free composition and broken color for the more cheerful accommodation of elegant status quo. So in the musical salon, Fauré and the rest tamed Wagner. No doubt art is celebration, but what is to be celebrated? The fragile Gallic shimmer of bourgeois delight? Or through a surface of romantic dark, morose assault of symbolist angels, the Holocaust overthrow of the physical by spirit? As with Franck's symphonic mysteries against the charm of Fauré, who can say which is more avant-garde? So it was attuned to that older symbolist pain and Faustian attack that a post-impressionist corps, withdrawing from the already prosperous circle of Manet, turned impressionist weapons against the ephemeral ease of impressionist savoir-faire. Gauguin, seeking realms as visionary as of Mallarmé's Faun, Nymphs, I shall see the shadow you became. Couple adieu, je vais voir l'ombre que tu devins. Though salon eased, perhaps, in the music Debussy wrote for the poem. Van Gogh, radical as Rimbaud, I accustomed myself to plain hallucination. At last I held sacred the disorder of my spirit. Je finis par trouver sacré le désordre de mon esprit. Consumptive Laforgue, praying that whirlwinds and floods sweep the leprosy of cities, that nothing be known of this rotted brain which was the earth one day, de ce cerveau pourri qui fut la terre un jour. Laforgue, for whom on all the peopled stars a fraternal outcry will be raised against God, ce sera contre Dieu la clameur fraternelle. Cézanne, most rooted in the past, most looming over the future, shaping from personal neurosis and ennui, an art as Olympian in well-being as Whitman's, yet as radically compulsive as Rimbaud's. Cézanne, great beyond parallel, though with cognates everywhere. From Verlaine, the sky above the roof, si bleu, si calme, a tree above the roof sways its fronds. The bell in the sky you see softly sounds. Through Mallarmé, obsessed with the azure, je suis hanté. L'azur, 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 l'azur. Rimbaud, closing the vowel poem we earlier began, foully. Oh, supreme clarion, full of strange stridor, silences crossed by worlds and angels. Oh, the omega, violet beam from his eyes. Oh, l'omega, rayon violet de ses yeux. To Valérie, 1920. When on the abyss a sun takes repose, pure works of an eternal cause, dream is knowledge in a time that shines. Le temps scintille, et le songe est savoir. When those post-impressionist assaults have been absorbed with the others, Seurat, Ensor, Munch, in the chain-reacting iconoclasm of Avant-Garde, to kindle by 1905 the Fauves, wild men, more fiercely improvising with colour and form, and when that salvo has yielded in Paris to analytical cubism, and over Europe touched off Blauer-Reiter, suprematist, futurist darers of the pure abstract, this 1911 Boccioni, forces of a street, as in the 1910 Manifesto, no less the forces of the coming World War.
Der Mond, ein blankes Türkenschwert auf einem schwarzen Seidenkissen.
A roaring motor car that looks as though running on shrapnel is more beautiful than the victory of Samothrace. We wish to glorify war, the only health giver of the world, militarism, patriotism, the destroying arm of the anarchist, and the beautiful ideas that kill. In the desperate ecstasy of that increasingly global enactment of the drunken boat, music too in Schönberg, pursuing the Wehrmacht attack on tonality.
Der Mond, das blankes Türkenschwert.
Les papillons couleur de neige volent par essaim sur la mer. Beaux papillons blancs.
Under successive revolts, how could there not be successive pinings back, as to Renoir's Girl in a Garden, with Chausson's Butterflies, Les Papillons, a tenderness already of the past, though Bonnard would enchant it forward, such a prayer as Yeats for his daughter, such a wish as Picasso's in his children. Had not the most infernal rebel of them all, Rimbaud, brought the superboy daring of the Bateau Ivre not only to a regret for Europe of the ancient parapets, but to the ineffable child nostalgia of the penultimate stanza, closing an avant-garde hazard irreversibly lived through.
Et j'y mourrai.
If I want any water of Europe, it is the black, cold puddle, where in the scented twilight a squatting child, full of sorrows, launches a boat frail as a butterfly of May. Si je désire une eau d'Europe, c'est la flash noire et froide, où vers le crépuscule embaumé, un enfant accroupi, plein de tristesse, lâche un bateau frêle comme un papillon de mai.